بحث پروسه صلح داشتیم و بحث همکاری‌های منطقوی را داشتیم، همکاری‌های منطقوی اقتصادی را داشتیم و امروز پنل آخر ما هست. دیروز از صحبت‌هایی که خصوصاً به این پنل ربط داشت همکاری‌های منطقوی اقتصادی بود، فرصت‌های اقتصادی به بحث گرفته شد و موانعی که وجود داشت امروز او را به بحث میگیریم. پنل امروزی ما به دیدگاه‌های منطقوی و بین المللی در قبال افغانستان هست. بود اقتصادیش دیروز به بحث گرفته شد و ما امروز بود بیشتر سیاسی و نظامیش به بحث میگیریم. طوری که همه ما شما شاهد هستیم در یک دهه آخر منطقه چالش‌های جدی روبرو شده که ما از یک طرف چالش‌های امنیتی داریم، بیشتر برمیگرده به گروه‌های تروریستی مثل شبکه‌های حقانی، لشکر طیبه یا تحریک اسلامی ازبکستان یا حرکت اسلامی ترکستان شرقی یا انصارالله تاجیکستان. اینا تهدیدهایی است که ما در گذشته پیش از 11 سپتامبر نداشتیم. یا به یک بود دیگه اگر ما بگویم حضور بعد از سقوط رژیم طالبان و حضور غرب زمانی که القاعده در افغانستان فعالیت میکرد، یک نوع روابط بین گروه های کوچک تروریستی در این منطقه شکل گرفت. امروز اینا تهدیدهای جدی است و فرصت ها را دیروز ما به بحث گرفتیم و میخوایم امروز بیره به بحث بگیریم با پنلیست هایی که داریم اینجا. آیا ما تعریف مشترک از تروریسم داریم؟ آیا تعریف مشترک از تهدیدها در منطقه داریم؟ Yesterday and today mainly we discussed many issues which was peace process, reconciliation, and also today we discussed corruption, drug and criminality and terrorism and the link between them. Yesterday at the same time we had a panel on the economic cooperation in the region. As it was discussed, we had many economic opportunities in the region which can bring us together. All right. Well, I'll go. I will have it in English. So, we discussed the economic side of the regional cooperation, and it seems that economic opportunities, in a way, are held hostage by threats mainly emanating from armed militancy, terrorism, non-state actors. So we'll be discussing this dimension of regional cooperation today. With us today we have the panelists. I will introduce them. We have His Excellency Aziz Ahmed Khan. He's a senior Pakistani diplomat. He was a former senior Pakistani diplomat. He once served as an envoy to Kabul during Taliban regime, and then he was also Pakistan's High Commissioner to India from 2003 to 2006. At that time I was a student in India. I remember the relation between two countries was not very good, and he brought that relation in a normalcy. So we're honored to have you today in the panel, sir. And also we have with us on our far right Mr. Arun Saghal. He's a retired army officer. He established Center for Strategic Studies in the United Service Institute of India. He also co-authored a book on Afghanistan. He's founder and director of Forum for Strategic Initiative. It's a policy-oriented think tank, Delhi-based. So, thank you for being in the panel. And also we have with us on my right, Mr. Dr. Mohammadi Safolzoda. اینا معین مرکز تحقیقات استراتژیک تاجیکستان هستند و این مرکز تحت ریاست رئیس جمهور به پیش میره و ایشان همچنان استاد دانشگاه در رشته تاریخ و روابط بین الملل در دانشگاه دولتی مسکو در شعبه دوشنبه هستند. پیش از اینکه معاون این مرکز تحقیقاتی باشن، به حیث مشاور رئیس جمهور کار میکردن. شکر استاد. و on our left, far right, we have Dr. Jean-Luc Racine. He's an emeritus senior fellow at the Center for South Asian Studies at the School of Advanced Social Sciences, Paris. And he's also vice president of an Asia Center, a Paris-based think tank. He mainly is area of focus and researches on India and Pakistan, and also on the geopolitics of South Asia in relation to the reconfiguration of global power balance. Thank you for coming, all of you, on the most welcome. So now we, as I said, we have limited time, and also there's a last slide and last session. So we have a restrict timing. Every panel will have a maximum of 10 minutes. Then I will be warning if we exceed that, and then I will stop. After every speaker commenting, then we will have each panelist comments or remarks. So first we'll proceed with you, His Excellency the Ambassador. Either you sit here.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great honor, and I'm particularly thankful to my friend, Dr. Mohammadi and his institute to have invited me to this wonderful session. I'm visiting Herat after 1998. 98 was when I visited Herat the last time. And as I was looking around, driving around here during the day today, the difference that I noticed brought to my mind the fact what international cooperation can do, what the determination of a community who wish to progress and at the same time when they get the required assistance can do. And the city is completely transformed, and I could not recognize it at all. And this, I think, is also is true of nearly all of Afghanistan. In the last 12, 14 years, the change that has come in because of the involvement of international community and their assistance and the determination of the Afghan people to develop their country and to develop their institutions and to develop a better life for themselves. And I think this success story, whatever criticisms there may be for that, I still consider it a remarkable success, and I feel that keeping that in mind, there is need that the international community continues to remain engaged with Afghanistan and continues to give them the assistance that they need. More and more, they will be able to stand on their own feet, but that assistance is required, and that is the subject of our discussion this afternoon. One has seen the changes in the last, and no better demonstration of the will of the Afghan people to protect the institutions that they have developed over the past 12 years or 14 years is the recent political transition that we have seen, and the maturity that the Afghan people have demonstrated by coming to an agreement, the way the agreement has been reached. And it is a momentous occasion because as we conclude this session tomorrow, the transition will actually take place, and the new administration will take over peacefully through democratic elections. These elections also were a demonstration of how things have evolved, in the sense that the number of the turnout of the people to vote, despite all the predictions of threats and violence and so on, and particularly the women also who came out and voted, is an example of how things have transformed and how things have changed. And because of that, the international community needs to remain engaged with Afghanistan. Now, what are the prospects of that? Now, and while discussing those prospects, I would like to divide it into the assistance from West, from the regional countries, and from the immediate neighbors. As Afghanistan has received in the past 12, 14 years, generous, 13 years, generous assistance from the international community. The way the things are today, the way the transition is taking place, and also a gradual drawdown of forces from here, is indicative that Afghanistan cannot depend on the same scale of assistance that was provided in the past. That there will be a diminution and reduction in that assistance, and in order to compensate for that, there will be a need to tightening up the fiscal policies, the tightening up of the way that money is spent, and to make sure by the government, by the new administration of Afghanistan, that there is no slippage and there is no wastage, and that money is as well spent as is possible to have. And that would be the most important challenge that the new administration will have, and I think that there is need for that. At the same time, Afghanistan will have to, and is developing, they will have to develop economically to the extent that they can generate more and more resources of their own, so that as time passes, and as institutions get strengthened, they would not ultimately, they would reach a stage where they would not have the need to expect any foreign assistance, and they would be able to stand on their own feet. Till such time, and I think things are changing, till such time there is need that assistance from the West keeps coming in, because they are in a position to supply that, despite the distractions, despite the slowdown of economy in Europe and the other Western countries. Despite that, there is need that assistance keeps flowing to Afghanistan. As far as the regional countries are concerned, in the region, I will divide it into two groups. First, there's the group is the neighbors who share border with Afghanistan, and other regional countries. In the other regional countries, Turkey, Russia, India are important players who have been helping Afghanistan during the past 12, 14 years, and it is expected that they will remain economically engaged in developmental activities, so that Afghanistan institutions are developed and Afghanistan's economy improves. India has given good help to Afghanistan. Russia has given help to Afghanistan. Turkey has been engaged very constructively with Afghanistan, and because of historical reasons, I presume that Turkey will remain engaged also in the future. The amount of interest they have shown, the international conferences they have held, and the pledging conferences that they've held, the Heart of Asia conference that Turkey held, all these are indicative that the regional countries will focus on helping Afghanistan. The countries that share the border with Afghanistan have a specific role to play. For Central Asia, it is important because they have the worry that Afghanistan does not again revert to the kind of chaos that it had experienced in the 90s, so that the threats that they felt, which were manifested in the form of the rise of IMU or the Chechens and so on, that those threats are eliminated and those threats do not recur again. So their interest would remain, apart from, of course, the trade aspects and economic interaction aspects. The Central Asia, Afghanistan is a bridge for Central Asia, a bridge between Central Asia and South Asia. Central Asia is rich in in energy resources. South Asia needs those energy resources. Both Pakistan and India particularly need those resources. And the TAPI pipeline, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India type pipeline, was a manifestation of that need. And I think as the security situation improves in Afghanistan, that project will come online and would be a manifestation of regional cooperation. Apart from that, Iran has an abiding interest in Afghanistan. It has close linkages, close ties, cultural, historical relations going over millennia, and that engagement will continue in a very constructive manner. China has a very small border with Afghanistan, but it is one of the most important countries in the region. With their economic development, they are flush with money. They can afford to invest a lot more. They have demonstrated that by already showing an interest in the Anak copper mines. And as the security situation improves, there is every reason to believe that China would increase its investment, will invest more, and that investment would be good for Afghanistan in the sense that that is not just simply giving assistance, it would be developing the economic resources in Afghanistan so that the Afghans are earning that money and not receiving it as gift or something like that, which is what is needed for an economy. As far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan has probably no other country matches the kind of relationship that two countries have as Afghanistan and Pakistan. The 2,600-kilometer long border, it is a porous border, the interaction, the way Afghans look towards Pakistan for help and vice versa has been at the people's level, has been manifesting itself at the people's level. Every time there is any adversity, the Afghans do not feel shy of moving across and going for help. Even today, Pakistan is hosting about 3 million Afghans in Pakistan, and has been hosting probably in history the longest record where the refugees have stayed in another country for the last 30 years. We have been hosting between 5 million to 3, now it's come down to 3 million refugees. And we will continue to support that and keep helping so that conditions are created whereby these refugees can return to their own homes, because nobody wants to live as refugees abroad. They would prefer to return to their homes. Apart from that, during these reconstruction process, about 50 or 60,000 Pakistani skilled technicians have come over to Afghanistan to help in the reconstruction projects, the electricians and the masons and the other technically qualified people, which just shows how close the interaction between the two countries is. Trade between the two countries has increased phenomenally. At one time in the 90s, I remember it was about $24 million. Now it touched almost $2 billion at one time, and the potential is enormous, and it is going to increase further. There are little hiccups, there are little problems the two countries have, as any two neighbors sharing the border have and are likely to have. But I think the trend lit.
I think crossed 10 minutes.
Yeah, have I?
Yeah.
Oh.
I have a timer with me.
There is likelihood that that cooperation will continue, and these problems will be eliminated. I think lately, over the past, and particularly since last year, the understanding and the level of discussion has improved. The two sides are showing better understanding, and I'm quite sure that those little hiccups that we have had in our relationship will be removed, and we will forge towards a closer cooperation. In summing up, I would say that I feel that the prospects of cooperation regionally, as far as with Western countries, will continue. It will, but at the same time, Afghanistan, as it is already showing, will also continue to develop in a manner that need for that assistance gets gradually reduced, and one day, with all its rich resources, both human and natural, Afghanistan will be able to stand on its own 2 feet. Thank you very much.
Dr. Jin.
It's on? Oh, yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank the IS for the wonderful opportunity which has been offered. It's for me really a privilege to be here and looking at the region from ever west and east. To be here, it's really a great experience. As the time is short, I'll try just to put in a few minutes some of remarks which touch both to the two issues that the panel is supposed to address, which is both the international cooperation and the regional cooperation. I could, of course, have spent some time on what has been, for instance, the French relationship with Afghanistan, with its long history, with a traditional French-speaking elite in the country, from, of course, what has been the military engagement of France after 9/11 in the country, how we moved away in 2012 while maintaining cooperation, and of course the role that France has played discreetly with the so-called Chantilly meeting for trying to help to the process of reconciliation, which was expected to take off in Kabul. But I think this being said, it's more important to try to understand what's happening at the global level as far as this dichotomy between the so-called West and the neighbors, the near neighbors and the extended neighbors. As far as the West is concerned, of course, if we start with America, there is at least two paradoxes. One, as everyone knows, is embodied in a way by the last statement made by President Karzai about America. And so a kind of complete breakup between a country which has invested so much in money and men, and the disconnect finally between Kabul and Washington. And on the other hand, there is a second paradox. Many countries which are not very much US friendly were accusing America to have a kind of hidden imperialist agenda, but as soon as Washington announced that the US forces will withdraw, there was some serious concern, and if I'm not wrong, in 2012, Sergei Lavrov made a statement saying, but it's absolutely irresponsible to decide to move so soon. So there is always this kind of balance, and we see finally the same type of comments from analysts in China, from analysts in Russia, and finally this Western retreat is more a matter of concern for a number of countries which were not necessarily very favorable to the American policy. Now there is NATO that we have not much talk about, but the NATO flag is just there. And we have to take note, of course, of the last NATO summit, the Wales Summit Declaration early this month, which is rather good news as the NATO has confirmed the willingness to remain engaged on the long haul, not, of course, through the ISAF, but through a three-tier agenda, short term with the so-called resolute support mission, medium term with the transformation decade, and even an enduring partnership on the long term. You have the EU, which has renewed its commitment since last year, and which has congratulated the upcoming government. Here again, the commitment for the long haul has been reasserted, with, however, not some caveat, but not really conditionalities, but a clear demand for seeing the new Afghan government to quickly implement urgent reforms. So in a way, if I conclude briefly on the West, you have a sense of fatigue, a feeling of withdrawal, and on the other hand, in the West, there is clearly also the willingness of a feeling that one cannot afford to repeat the mistake of 1992, when finally, after the Soviet Union disappeared, there was a lack of interest for Afghanistan. That, of course, has to be understood not just the West and Afghanistan, but in the larger, broader scenario, or what has been the redefinition of US policy with the so-called pivot to Asia, which is a matter of concern for China. The neighborhood, I'll go very fast. There is, I think, and I would like to avoid both gloom and gloom attitude on the one hand, and to the magnificent delusion on the other hand. There is clearly a kind of dichotomy between the speech and the text emanating from many neighbors. Everyone on paper is supporting the Afghan-led process. Everyone is for non-interference. Everyone is supposed to be on board with the Istanbul process. But it seems that between the words and the deeds, there is quite a number of impediments. The Afghan Institute of Strategic Studies has released 2-3 months ago a very detailed report on those impediments on the Istanbul process. So clearly, and when we look, and there are a number of studies which have been conducted in France and in many other countries and in countries directly interested with Afghanistan. Notes have been published about what could be or what should be our respective policy. We had one from Oleg Kulakov distributed during this conference as far as Russia is concerned. And it's quite clear that all the neighbors, close or more far away, feel concerned, but it's still unclear about what would be their type of engagement. Not military engagement, that's valid for Russia, that's valid for China, but between a policy of investment that China will prefer, between the kind of interrogation about China. Is China under presidency is moving from non-interference to what is called now creative engagement. What does it mean? What is committed? There is, of course, the question of security, the linkage with the Uyghur problem. As far as Russia is concerned, we have heard, and everyone knows that finally it seems that the drug issue is in a way more important than the security issue as far as extremism is concerned. And I can carry on like that, no need to deal with Pakistan, it has been done. India, it will be done. Sushma Swaraj, the Indian Foreign Minister, was in Kabul not long ago, saying, we are very committed, we'll do our best as far as our means permit. So we can carry on also with Iran or with Central Asia. So in a way, and I'll come to my conclusion, there are two types of issues which have to be understood. One is the apparent dichotomy between geopolitics and geoeconomics. Some of the speakers during the economic panel yesterday say, you know, there are some economic rationales and everything should follow this economic rationale, and forget a bit about the legacy of hard geopolitics. But I think that there is a second definition of what geopolitics is. And when you hear the discourse coming, be it from India or being from China, it's the same word which is now coming up, which is connectivity. All the type of Silk Route, corridor, and this and that. And obviously, this question of building up trade and economic corridor, it's not just an economic decision. It's a geopolitical decision. But the question is, do you play the card of the balance of power, the old traditional greed game, while we are now rather in what some Indian analysts said, well, it's no more the greed game, it's the grey game, because there are many more players than during the 19th century. And that we have to be careful, and I close, yes, I close, yeah, thank you very much. This connectivity paradigm, it's very easy to discuss about it, to discuss about the project. But of course, nothing will happen if the security is not improved. But what's important is not to play games with all the opportunities to push aside cooperation opportunities. Think about the Ukraine question. You have some people who believe in Russia and in other countries as well that with a difficult time between the West and Russian relationship, well, after all, it would be an opportunity for Asia. It remains to be seen how it will materialize. And finally, between this balance of power on the one hand and the balance of interest, the question remains what space would be given to the UN. Not just the UNAMA and the various UN agencies, but the UN in New York. What we see now and what we shall see as far as Afghanistan is concerned has to be interpreted in the way both the traditional established power on the one hand and the emerging countries on the other hand. How do they perceive what should be the role in building a new world order? And in this context, of course, Afghanistan has to be relocated in a framework which is not just the regional one, but surely the multilateral one. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. حالا از آقای محمدی خواهش میکنیم که درباره سازمان همکاری شانگهای صحبت کنند و تاثیر آن در رابطه همکاری منطقه‌ای. اگر
میخواهم اظهار سپاسگزاری از مردم مهمان نواز شهر قدیمه و باستانی هرات برای مهمان نوازی خیلی گرم و در مجموع از تمام مردم افغانستان بار دیگر اظهار سپاسگزاری نمایم. میخواستم در اینجا به اجازت شما وقتی که نام شهر هرات را ما میگیریم به یاد بیاریم که این همون شهری باستانی است که 500 سال قبل از میلاد ارضی وجود داشت، در راه بزرگ ابریشم قرار داشته، در زمان اسکندر مقدونی مرکزی علم و فرهنگ بوده و با فرزانه خویش در عصرهای 14 و 15 با نام جامی و نوایی و خواندمیر و مصور کمال‌الدین بهزاد به جهانیان و تمدن انسانیت سهم ارزنده گذاشته است. با استفاده از این فرصت مناسب میخواستم نتیجه انتخابات ریاست جمهوری افغانستان را به شما تبریک عرض نمایم. جانب جمهوری تاجیکستان از انتخاب مردم افغانستان استقبال می نماید. کشورهای تاجیکستان و افغانستان دارای مشترکات زیاد به شمول تاریخ، زبان، دین و بستر عمومی فرهنگی هستند که از این نگاه آنها صلح و امنیت آنها و ثبات افغانستان برای کشور ما خیلی مهم و با اهمیت است. به این خاطر است که تاجیکستان تقویت دوستی تاریخی مردمان دو کشور را امر اصولا ضروری دانسته، همزمان با این جانبدار گسترش روابط حسنه، همکاری‌های اقتصادی و فرهنگی می باشد. یک حقیقت مسلم است که در یک جایگی و متحدی هر گونه مشکلات و معضله را می توان حل و فصل نمود و بر ضد هر گونه خطرات و چالش‌هایی که امروز در اینجا دوستان محترم ما صحبت کردند می توان مشترکاً ایستادگی نمود. در این راستا هر چه زودتر برقرار شدن صلح و ثبات سیاسی و پایدار در قلمرو افغانستان دوستی همجوار پاسخگوی منفعت‌های حیاتی و ملی تاجیکستان است. بنابراین استقرار صلح در انتظار و احیای زندگی مسالمت‌آمیز در کشور اذیت کشیده افغانستان توأم با تأمین امنیت منطقوی پیوند ناگسستنی دارد. مهمترین دستاورد این به اتمام رسیدن پروسه نتیجه انتخابات رئیس جمهوری کشور افغانستان، تشکیل حکومت وحدت ملی همچون نیاز حیاتی کشور و مردم افغانستان است که آن برای رسیدن به صلح و ثبات و وحدت ملی میتواند زمینه با اعتماد را اساس ببخشد. در اینجا در صحبت‌های که شدند همگان به این نظر هستند که هیچ کشوری نمیتواند در زمان معاصر با آن چالش ها، با آن خطراتی که در حال حاضر وجود دارد به تنهایی مبارزه ببرد. برای همین در این جا میخواستم با استفاده از این فرصت با شما مختصرا درباره نشست سران کشورهای سازمان همکاری های شانگهای که در تاریخ 11 و 12 سپتامبر سال 2014 در شهر دوشنبه برگزار گردید و جانب جمهوری تاجیکستان ریاست آن را در طول این سال سپری گشته به عهده داشت، یک چند صحبت مختصر نمایم. طبیعی است که یکی از موضوعهای مورد بررسی سازمان همکاری‌های شانگهای این مسئله کشور افغانستان بود و کشورهای عضو این سازمان ابراز نگرانی از وضع افغانستان نمودند و آنها به این عقیده بودند که مسائل افغانستان باید هر چه زودتر با راه سیاسی و صلح‌آمیز حل و فصل گردد. بار دیگر تکرار می‌نمایم که آن خطرات و آن چالش‌هایی که امروز به مثل تروریسم بین المللی، تندگرایی مذهبی، قاچاق مواد مخدر، جنایتکاری سازمان یافته فرامرزی، قاچاق سلاح و انسان و سایر آنها وجود دارند، نه تنها به افغانستان بلکه به تمام کشورهای منطقه و جهان تهدید می‌نمایند. حوادث شرق نزدیک و حوادث کشورهای دیگر شاهد این صحنه می‌باشند. برای همین است که اینجا مثال خوب صدا داد که اگر عضو به درد آورد روزگار، و این خاطر است که در مجموع نگاه نشست سران سازمان همکاری های شانگهای به این بود که مشکلات افغانستان مشکلات منطقه و عالمیان است و این پدیده را به تنهایی نمیتوان حل و فصل نمود. بنابراین در نشست شانگهای تاکید و وظیفه گذاری گردید که با تهدید و خطرات معاصر باید در سطح عالی همکاری های منطقوی توسط تبادل وسیع اطلاعات من جمله مشترکاً با کشورهای ناظر یعنی همکاران این سازمان میتوان ایستادگری کرد. باید ذکر کرد که موضع‌گیری جانب تاجیکستان در قبال افغانستان به شکل ذیل است که آن از جانب رئیس جمهوری تاجیکستان محترم امامعلی رحمان ابراز گردید. یعنی راه برون رفت کشور افغانستان از این مشکلات موجوده راه و اصول نظامی نیست و این مسئله و این معضله میتواند تنها به شکل مذاکرات سیاسی و از طریق مصالحه حل و فصل گردد. به همین اساس است که یک چند تزیس در اینجا ابراز گردید که مهمترین آنها نکات ذیل می باشند. یعنی تأسیس یک حکومت وحدت ملی توسط نقشه های مشترک سازمان ملل متحد و سازمان همکاری های شانگهای، طرح‌های مهم باید برای بازسازی افغانستان آماده و عملی کرده شوند. در چهارچوب سازمان همکاری های شانگهای برای افغانستان هرچی بیشتر برنامه‌های خاص جهت احیای اقتصادیات کشور طرح‌ریزی و عملی گردند. برنامه خاصی همکاری های شانگهای برای افغانستان بر عوض گروه تماس یعنی گروه تماس سازمان همکاری های شانگهای افغانستان طرح‌ریزی و آماده کرده شود که کمیته اجرایی فعال داشته باشد و این نهاد در عملی کردن ساختن طرح‌های متذکره نقش مثمر را اجرا نماید. نکته مهم است که کل کشورها از وباهای عصر به مثل تروریسم بین المللی، زر، کیشت و قاچاق مواد مخدر، تندگرایی مذهبی، جنایتکاری‌های سازمان یافته فرامرزی، قاچاق سلاح و انسان اظهار نگرانی نمودند و دارند. به این خاطر تذکر داده شد که جامعه جهانی تنها توسط مشترک دست جمعانه میتواند از این پدیده‌های نامطلوب نه تنها افغانستان بلکه سایر کشورهای در زیر فشار این وبا قرار داشته و به این پدیده گرفتار را از قید برهانند. کشور تاجیکستان همیشه خواستار صلح و ثبات، امنیت و رشد و شکوفایی کشور دوست و برادر افغانستان است و در این راستا همه کوشش و تلاش ها را به خرج می‌دهد. به این خاطر در همین اجلاس تذکر داده شد که در نظر است در سال 2016 جلسه خاصی سازمان ملل متحد در رابطه با موضوع مواد مخدر و مشکلات آن در جهان دایر گردد. هدف از برگزاری این اجلاس در سال 2016 جستجوی راه‌های نوی حل و فصل پرابلم‌های پیچیده شده گردش غیرقانونی مواد مخدر میباشد. محض به همین اساس رهبر دولت تاجیکستان محترم امام علی رحمان در اجلاس سران سازمان همکاری‌های شانگهای پیشنهاد نمودند که در سال 2015 در شهر دوشنبه کنفرانس منطقوی سازمان همکاری‌های شانگهای در رابطه با پرابلم‌های تهدید مواد مخدر با اشتراک کشورهای ناظر و همکاران سازمان شانگهای و با دعوت سازمان‌های بین‌المللی منفعت‌دار دایر گردند. با یک نکته دیگر را ما در اینجا ذکر نماییم که رسیدگی به صلح و ثبات سراسری عمل نجیب است که هم از نگاه بشری و هم از نگاه انسانی قابل ستایش. وقتی که ما درباره صلح و ثبات افغانستان میگوییم ما نمیتوانیم یک نکته را فراموش کنیم که در زمان چرا ما این را از جانب تاجیکستان تکرار به تکرار میگوییم ما تلخی جنگ شهروندی را دیده ایم. ما میدانیم چه مصیبت است که بی‌ثباتی در کشور حکمران باشد. در سالهای شروع استقلال جمهوری تاجیکستان چنین مشکلات چنین بدبختی به سر مردم تاجیکستان هم تحمیل کرده شد. تنها توسط وحدت ملی و صلح ثبات ما توانستیم در تاجیکستان آن صلح در انتظار را بیاریم و به این خاطر است که ما برای افغانستان دوست همیشه صلح و ثبات و همکاری متقابلا سودمند را آرزومندیم و می‌خواهیم در این راستا همکاری همیشگی داشته باشیم. یک نکته دیگر را می‌خوام در اینجا تذکر بدهم که موضوع اولویت همکاری‌های بین تاجیکستان و افغانستان البته موضوعهای خیلی کلان است ولی در سرخط این اولویت‌ها موضوع همکاری‌ها در ساحه انرژی میباشد. من می‌خواهم با حاضرین محترم این نکته را عرض بکنم که طبق همان نقطه‌ای که دیروز در اینجا صدا داد یک برنامه هست به نام برنامه کسا هزار یعنی سنتر ایشیا ساوث ایشیا که در نظر است از جمهوری‌های آسیای میانه به شمول تاجیکستان که بند برق راغون را خواهد داشت انتقال نیروی برق از طریق کشور افغانستان با کشور پاکستان و هندوستان در نظر است و از آن طریق به طرف جنوب آسیا. و نکته از همه مهم است که یکی از نکته های همین برنامه ساختن خط بلند ولتاژ 550 کیلووات با شهر محبوب هرات ما و شماست و در اینجا با نظر داشت آن که شهر هرات در نظر است در آینده یکی از مرکزهای مهمی صنعتی افغانستان باشد به انرژی قوی نمیتوان این نکته را تصور کرد. همزمان برنامه دیگری که میتواند شهر هرات و این قسمت افغانستان را با جمهوری‌های آسیای میانه از طریق تاجیکستان بپیوندد ساختن راه ریل یا که آهنی بین ترکمنستان، افغانستان و تاجیکستان، قرقیزستان تا به چین است و در این راستا این خط نیز از طریق شهر هرات میگذرد و این بار دیگر تذکر میدهد که شهر هرات شهر صنعتی آینده خواهد بود.
دکتر ارون.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I also like to take this opportunity to thank IISS, Dr. Mohammadi, and the organizers for inviting me to this wonderful meeting. My remarks are slightly different from what you heard before because my entire focus is on the regional actors. Why I say regional actors is because peace and stability in Afghanistan directly impinges upon the stability of the region. And unless we can ensure that there gains the peace in the transformative process that Afghanistan is going through,
there would not be any peace and stability. If there is a regression to the democratic institution, democratic structures that have been created in Afghanistan, then the entire region will get engulfed in that regressive forces. Those forces will impede on each and every one of us. So those countries who have borders with Afghanistan and those countries who come in the first circle after that borders are equally responsible and stakeholders for ensuring peace and stability in Afghanistan. It is not something that we will do out of charity. It is not something that we need to do out of any over assistance to Afghanistan. I think it is imperative for all of us in the region to be an stakeholder for the future of Afghanistan. With that specific issues, I will, because the time is short and I'm the last speaker of the session, not only the session, of the entire conference, I'll just quickly highlight some important initiatives that we need to look at. The first initiative is that we must respect sovereignty and also ensure non-interference in Afghanistan. I don't think there can be any agreement on that, but the two specific issues that we need to look at, that regional actors, for various reasons, for various interests, should refrain from trying to play politics inside Afghanistan. The second issue is there need not be and should not be any negative competition between regional powers inside Afghanistan. We all need to cooperate, all need to put our energies together to substantially assist Afghanistan at this critical juncture. Insofar as the security issues are concerned, large number of initiatives have been spelled out. Some of these I like to highlight just to reiterate their importance. One is mitigation of cross-border terrorism. Now, this is an important issue. I mean, we all talk about the fact there is no cross-border terrorism, etc., etc. We all are aware of that. The neighboring countries need to take steps to address this issue. Until and unless this issue is specifically addressed, I'm afraid things will not improve. The second issue is cooperation on border controls and management. Enough has been said. The ex-Director IB from Pakistan, he very succinctly put in a large number of issues that we need to look at in terms of interoperability, having some kind of institutional SOPs to ensure both in terms of border management, border control, and also the drug issues. Third issue is prevention of cross-border attacks. There should be an absolute no reason for one side to enter into the borders of the other side. But if there are any reasons for that mechanism and SOPs need to be established. I mean, we have, coming from India, we have a fairly interesting borders with countries like Myanmar, from where we see counter-terrorism, terrorist grouping moving up and down. We see them moving up and down in other areas in our region. We have, over a period of time, established mechanisms, standard operating procedures, and communications with the other side to ensure that those mechanisms work and they are operative, and because both sides are interested in dealing with this menace. If we are talking about terrorism singeing Pakistan, terrorism singeing Afghanistan, terrorism singeing India, then it is imperative on all of us to put together these mechanisms which work and which are effective. My next issue is strengthening the role of the central government in enhancing reconciliation. You know, there is a need for the countries of the region to cooperate with the central government in Afghanistan to assist them. And here again, the issue that comes about is we need to define actual measures in how to bring about those changes for them. Institutional building, issues like socio-economic programs, etc. We are all doing it together. But the question at the end of the day is, if there is a regional impetus, I'm talking about a regional impetus primarily from the point of view is that let not one country and the two countries do things on their own. Let it be, and what we use the term is a regional compact. Let's have a regional compact where all the regional countries sit together, decide on specific programs, specific issues, the money they want to assist, etc., to put together a package for overall interest of Afghanistan. Then we talked about regional organizations. Yes, there are regional organizations. There is SCO, there is SARC, there is ECO, there is a large number of regional organizations. Each one of them are doing a wonderful job separately in accordance with their own intended purposes and interests. Is there a logic and a rationale we can put those things together? Can those all be filtered through regional compact, this little organizational structure that we are talking about, and push them through that? If we can start thinking about that, then we would again be channelizing our efforts. Channelizing our efforts. We talked, the session before this session on drug control was a very, very important session. We talked a lot of issues. And I can say whatever was being said in this room because recently I was in Hague and we were discussing in post-2015 millennium transnational threats and drug addiction came about, and Afghanistan was one of the case studies. So I totally endorse this whole issue. But the point at issue is the channelizing. My whole thrust is on channelizing, and my thrust of this channelizing, this whole process is that we need to create mechanisms. Each country on its own is doing, again I say, a laudable job, and I'll close with that, is doing a laudable job. But what we need to do is create a mechanism in terms of a regional compact that can have a little office somewhere. We will have a little vision plan, and the countries can start looking to work together, this little regional compact, to share their assets, share their capacities, share their vision, and help Afghanistan in this time of transition. Thank you.
First, we'll have comments of the panelists, then we'll take questions. Let me first have some comments from the panelists, then we'll take questions. Sir, you have served in the region in the last 2 decades, and you're one of the senior diplomats and have experience even serving during Taliban here. So, as Dr. Jin also mentioned about the contradiction or paradox of things on paper are very rosy, everything's are fine. We have Istanbul process, Herat of Asia, and everything is going well. But at the same time, in reality, we see problems of terrorism. All of the countries in the region, if we speak of Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, even today, these days, China, we're all in a way a victim of terrorism. So what are the obstacles, or what are the challenges? Or do we have a common definition of threat? Or the threat which India or Afghanistan sees, does Pakistan share the same? Or China? Thank you.
I think in the earlier session, Dr. Saghal described the suffering that Pakistan has suffered at the hands of terrorism, so I would not go into those details. The paradox between the intentions and the delivery, I think that is part of the entire human civilizational process. When intentions are expressed, they are a demonstration that that collection of people are sincerely committed to doing something. The sentiment also comes into it. But once the delivery time comes, then the impediments of every nature all become a reality. For example, a lot of commitments are given at international conferences about financial assistance. But when you go home and you look at your own economic situation, and if there is a downturn in that economic situation, obviously despite the best of your intentions, your capacity to deliver gets reduced. The same thing happens in any other activity. Once and particularly an activity which is as complicated and as difficult as terrorism is. In order to be able to cooperate in that, there become physical obstacles. But the fact remains that the intention is there. For example, SARC has an anti-terrorism mechanism, have decided, and I think cooperation is going in that direction. But building that cooperation, building the institutions to be able to have that cooperation, that becomes difficult. At the same, that requires time. At the same time, there are your own limitations, each country's reservations, limitations, etc. So harmonizing the entire process takes a little time, takes better understanding, and sometimes when there is not enough understanding, and each country within the region does not have identical relationship with each other. There are differences, there are difficulties. So those becomes the practical realities. But the fact still remains that there is a sincere and honest intention to reduce that paradox as much as possible. And I think as time passes, we have seen how the things and cooperation have improved.
Dr. Jen.
Basically, I agree. The problem, of course, is how to get good intention from all actors at the same time. I would like just to comment upon what Mr. Saghal has mentioned, the regional compact. I think it's extremely important, but here again, let us not reinvent the wheel every day. The Delhi Policy Group has published a few weeks or months ago a very fine document about what could be a regional compact after a series of meetings with players from the region. So the bases are there. The question is, for instance, at the next Earth of Asia conference, which was supposed to be held in Tianjin and that China decided to postpone. So was the conference postponed because everyone was waiting for the presidential election result here in Afghanistan, or for some other reason? But obviously, when some players who have been active with the Istanbul process are a little less active now, what the immediate neighbors, including China, would be able to do on the regional compact? The basis already exists. So the crux of the matter, in fact, is the political willingness in the various countries, and and I end with that. It's the chicken and the egg between international cooperation, economic development, and the quest for stability. Is the quest for stability starting with a prerequisite of reconciliation within Afghanistan? So, or not? So in any case, the international cooperation, whatever be the various geometries of the exercise, is absolutely necessary. But of course, the works, as some Afghan speakers have mentioned repeatedly during those 2 days, the work has to start here by Afghans themselves, of course. And here we come back to a point that was mentioned yesterday as far as America was concerned. And in fact, there is a very large demand from the international community what the new national unity government, with the new president being inaugurated tomorrow, what signal would be given to the neighbors and to the international community, let's say in the 3, 4, 5, 6 months. That would be, I think, very important. Some sort of trust has to be rebuilt, but by definition, trust presupposes that all players are more or less on the same tune.
Thank you, Dr. Jen. Dr. Arun.
Okay. No, I just want to highlight one thing. There are a large number of trilaterals and bilaterals going on amongst the regional players. We have one going on with the China, which also includes Afghanistan. We have bilaterals going on with Iran, etc. We have large number of track 2 discourses where we have basically thrashed out exactly what is to be done. The question basically is this, that the time has come, and that's my point. if you are discussing all that in track 1 and track 2, the time has come, put it all together as one as one regional compact. The idea of regional compact, rightly true. I've been associated, I've been part of those discussions of the Delhi Policy Group. It is a Delhi Policy Group initiative, and which they are very proud of. The fundamental point is that idea remains an idea, but it needs to be implemented. And that's the point I'm trying to put across, is that it is not as if the regional players are saying that we don't want to act, we don't want to be part of this. They all are doing it. They're doing it either selectively or with 1 or 2 players, but they're not doing it all together. My idea is do it all together. That's the important point.
دکتر سی بگر دو دقیقه شما.
تشکر. وقتی که درباره پروسه صلح با صحبت میکنیم، من میخواستم یک نکته رو در اینجا حتما خدمت جناب حضار محترم عرض بکنم که زمان مشکلاتی که در تاجیکستان سالهای 90 به میان آمد، یگانه راه برون رفت نشست و مذاکرات بود و کشور دوست افغانستان، مردم شریف افغانستان در این پروسه به ما خدمت بزرگی را انجام دادند و ما از این مردم سپاسگزار هستیم و باید بگویم که یکی از مرکزهای نشست و مذاکرات شهر کابل بود که آنها توانستند جانبها را پشت سر میز در اینجا بشنانند. البته همه این پروسه مذاکرات زیر پوشش سازمان پرنفوذترین بین المللی، سازمان ملل متحد و نهادهای مهم آن صورت گرفتند با کمک و تلاش‌های کشورهای دوست تاجیکستان به مثل روسیه، ایران، افغانستان و سایر کشورهای دیگر که خواستار صلح و ثبات در تاجیکستان بودند. برای همین در حال حاضر یگانه راه برون رفت از این مشکلات و معضله نشست، مذاکرات و راه مسالمت آمیز حل و فصل مشکلات موجوده میان جانب‌ها می باشد.
تشکر. یک سوال میگیریم مرتضی صاحب بفرمایید. و اگر هر کسی که
بسیار تشکر. سوال ما متوجه هر 4 مهمان است. نام شاه حسین مرتضوی است. کشورهای منطقه متاسفانه در همکاری منطقه‌ای با کشورهای متحد حکومت افغانستان که غربی ها باشد همکاری جدی نداشته. برای نمونه جمهوری اسلامی ایران حضور نیروهای بین المللی را به عنوان اشغال خطاب میکنه و حلقات در پاکستان عملا جهاد در افغانستان تجویز میکنه و شانگهای هم در عمل رسما در تقابل با حضور نیروهای بین المللی در افغانستان است. سوال ما این است که کشورهای منطقه چطور میتواند که یک نقش مثبت و سازنده همکاری منطقه‌ای را که به نفع ثبات و صلح در افغانستان باشد پیگیری و دنبال کنه.
Actually, I'm very pleased to hear the positive remarks and texts of Aziz Khan on enormous changes and developments in Afghanistan after the Taliban. But I would like to ask both Aziz Khan and Dr. Arun, what are the major concerns of both India and Pakistan in their relations with Afghanistan? 1 or 2 points?
Yeah, you answer.
In my view, there is a fair amount of regional cooperation that is going on. People are aware of what is to be done. I take a country like India, we have invested a fair amount. I'm not talking in terms of billions of dollars, I'm not talking in terms of cost, but I'm talking in terms of resources, capital, human capital. There is an absolute desire to at least see not only the institutional building but also in the social sector there is a investment. I see the same kind of at least when we talk to our Chinese friends, they are equally concerned. They are wanting to invest money. They are keen to provide assistance. See, all these things, you are now going through a transition. Up to now, the perceptions of Afghanistan were different. With the ending of the post-2014 scenario, Afghanistan will be deemed to be a country which is running its own government its own and responsible for its own development and growth. So therefore, people will come out differently and discuss issues with you differently. You have to reach out. It's the new government's responsibility to initiate a diplomatic offensive with the countries and highlight to them what is their expectations, what is the new government's expectations from the regional stakeholders. It is your responsibility to reach out to them, discuss with them, and then see how much are they willing to come out with. Because like I said, it is not Afghanistan's problem alone. Regional countries realize that the instability in Afghanistan, should this experiment, God forbid, does not succeed, there is a problem for everybody. Thank you.
As far as regional cooperation is concerned, there are two aspects of it. One is the regional countries getting together and looking at common problems. In the case of Afghanistan, I think what needs to be done here is, how does Afghanistan wish to take advantage of the various regional groupings? And there are several and important ones who have the desire to cooperate with each other. But like in all activities of this nature, there is always a gap between the intentions and achievements. We have the SARC, South Asian Regional Cooperation Organization, we have the ECO, we have CAREC, we have Shanghai Cooperation Organization. All these organizations are there, all are working towards improvement of situation and for mutual benefit. For Afghanistan, I think it's all the more important that they should get even more deeply involved with it and see how they can take further advantage, because they are the ones who need that help more than any other. All of us need each other's help. But as you are building the country up, you need that help. And I'm sure that if you approach there collectively and individually, you will get cooperation from all the regional countries. As far as India-Pakistan problems are concerned, we have a bilateral process. We are discussing those problems. In that, everything that concerns each other gets discussed. And I'm sure that those concerns, as you have seen lately also, the intentions are positive, and I'm sure that we'll be able to overcome those.
Thank you. مبارزه بفرمایید. 7 دقیقه دیگه وقت داریم، با 2 سوال دیگه میگیریم حتما.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. ما با تمام گفته‌های برادر ما سفیر کبیر عزیز احمد خان با اکثر گفته‌هایش ما موافق هستم. تنها به روابط افغانستان و پاکستان ما موافق نیستم، برای که 68 سال است که من این روابط به حیث یک ژورنالیست تعقیب میکنم. در این 68 سال روابط ما یک روز قطع شده، یک روز سفارت‌های خود تخریب کردیم. یعنی روابط ما صحیح نبوده. برای که در 68 سال حکومت‌های ما به استثنای 2 بار نتوانستند روی مسائل اساسی اختلاف ما صحبت کنند. تنها یک بار بین سردار محمد داوود و ذوالفقار علی بوتو در کابل مذاکرات مستقیم صورت گرفت برای حل اختلاف سیاسی که به قول تنویر احمد خان که حال در او وقت سفیر کبیر بود در کابل و حال یک مؤسسه استراتژیک پاکستان اداره میکنه، او گفت یک تفاهم بینشان پیدا شده بود. متاسفانه ذوالفقار علی بوتو از بین رفت و باز این مذاکرات با جنرال ضیاءالحق ادامه پیدا کرد و او هم حادثات طیاره شدید، عملی نگردید. 2 بار این موافقات بین از اینا صورت گرفته ولیکن به اکمال نرسیده. آرمان‌های خوبی در اینجا اظهار شد برای همکاری منطقوی. من فکر میکنم مثال خوبی برای ما اروپاست. اروپا تا که اختلاف سیاسی خود بین خود حل نکردن نتانستان بازار مشترک و اتحادیه اروپا را بسازند. ما هم اختلاف سیاسی داریم، ما همراه پاکستان اختلاف سیاسی داریم، پاکستان همراه هند اختلاف سیاسی داره. اختلاف سیاسی پاکستان با هند سر ما تاثیر داره. اختلاف سیاسی ما با دوستی ما با هند با پاکستان تاثیر میکنه. بنابراین ما باید اختلافات سیاسی خود عادلانه حل کنیم، اسلامی حل کنیم و ما در این موضوع دیورند است که امروز صبح دیروز اینجا برادر دیگه پاکستانی ما راجع به او گپ زد. دیورند اینا اکثرا بین‌المللی میشناسن. ما او را خط که حد فاصل بین افغانستان و قبایل میشناسیم. برای که خود دیورند میگه او طرف خط به طرف ما یعنی به طرف هند این قلمرو برطانیه نیست، قلمرو هند برطانوی نیست. این جز هند برطانوی نبود که برای پاکستان به میراث بگذارن. این یک اختلاف سیاسی است یا موضوع حقوقی قبایل. اختلاف سیاسی سی به بحث حل میشه. این باید مستقیما مذاکره شود، لیکن تو گفته نشود که حل شده، چون این حل نشده. لیکن ما سر پاکستان کدام فشار روز نوردیم. اونا برای ما تروریست روان میکنن، اونا برای ما طالب روان میکنن. ما صبح که از خانه ما اولاد ما میبره ما فکر نمیکنیم که پس زنده می یا نمی. انفجار انتحاری در کجا صورت میگیره؟ به این خاطر اینا ما را تحت فشار به وسیله یعنی تروریسم وسیله فشار گرفتن برای از که اهداف سیاسی خود بقبولانن. چنانچه کرزی صاحب در آخرین مصاحبه خود گفت از ما دو چیز خواستن، یکی که کنترل سیاست خارجی افغانستان به دست بگیرن و دومی خط دیوران بشناسم. از این خاطر نه ما خط دیوران طور بدون قید و شرط شناخته میتونیم، نه کنترل سیاست خارجی خود به کس داده میتونیم. این دو اختلاف است. بیاین گپ بزنیم، روی میز بشینیم، راه حل پیدا کنیم، اسناد تاریخی خود، اسناد سیاسی خود به میدان پرتیم. تشکر.
تشکر مبارزی. تشکر.
I think the honorable gentleman has already answered the question himself, that we need to talk to each other. We are talking to each other. There have been moments when talks have been successful. There are moments when they receive a setback. We have different perceptions about certain issues. Durand line for Pakistan is an international border. For Afghanistan, it is not. We have to resolve this dilemma. Ultimately, it will get resolved. Time will resolve it. Better relations will resolve it. In a certain manner, the line doesn't exist at all. Because 50,000 Afghans are cross just the two crossing points. They come over freely. They go back freely. So it depends on how you are looking at that particular situation. But I agree with you entirely that the two countries need to continue the dialogue process, need to talk to each other in a constructive manner, need to talk to each other in a frank manner also. There is no need to take offense about that. You have a perception, I have a perception. We look at things differently. You can talk about a certain problem from a specific time frame that started from such and such date. We would like to look at it a little further back in time to see how that problem came about. One has to look at that also. When one is talking about terrorism, one has to go back a little bit in time and not be selective about that time frame that from this date on, there were reasons which gave rise to those other reasons. But I agree, we need to talk and talk extensively and intensively and in a very frank and brotherly manner.
سوال آخر است چون وقت ما پوره شده.
ما از اظهارات آخر حامد کرزی در مورد امریکا صحبت کردیم. شاه شجاع در ختم سفر در ختم حکومت خود توسط انگلیس ها به عزت شد. ببرک کارمل ما در ختم حکومت خود توسط شوروی به عزت شد. تصور نمیکنید که حامد کرزی هم جگرخون است و از چین بسیار به نیکویی یاد کرد. نشه که با کمک چین کدام فساد کنه. تصور شما چی است؟ تشکر.
ما فقط یک مسئله همکاری‌های منطقوی مطرح بوده. بیگ صاحب متوجه هستین؟ دوست تاجیکستانی ما با خوبی یاد کردن که زمانی که جنگ داخلی در تاجیکستان در گرفته بود، افغانستان با وجودی که مشکلات داخلی خود داشتیم، ولی رهبرای سیاسی ما و قهرمانای ما که امروز از قهرمانای ما هستند، با حرکت صادقانه مخالفین جمهوری تاجیکستان که احمد نوری صاحب بود، او را بردن با آقای امام علی شاندن و مسئله حل شد صادقانه. حالا ما هم از همسایه جنوبی خود اگر همین کار را بکنه آیا موفق نخواهد بودیم؟
Again to you.
Well, sorry. Yes, with your permission, I shall rather comment upon the previous discussion very quickly. Of course, everybody has in mind right now the Afghan transition. But we have to understand that there is a larger transition which is on, and many speakers, in fact, hinted at that. It's about all this issue of regional cooperation and basically both the regional power and the large emerging countries are asking rightly for greater recognition in the structure of the world order. If everyone, and I don't know, of course, if Russia is an emerging country, I mean, it's much more than that. But if everyone is just playing a zero-sum game, everyone will lose. So the question is how we are able to discuss even when we disagree. And this is, of course, the basis of diplomacy. And it's quite clear that everyone has to win if there is some joint collective reflection and action on Afghanistan. And it's the same in the Middle East, whatever be the difference of views. We have not talked much about Daesh those days, or if it expands, will it bring back more Western countries to support Afghanistan? This is a challenge for everyone. So the challenge for everyone is to be answered by all people together. Thank you.
Thank you. تشکر از حوصله‌مندی شما که سشن آخرم بود. معمولا آخر خسته کننده می باشه، همه منتظر پرواز و فردا هم تالیف رئیس جمهور جدید ماست. تشکر از همه شما حوصله‌مندیتون. و بحثی که بیشتر پانلیست های ما بسیار خوشبین بوده و من با اینا میپیوندم، اما خوشبینی را انشاءالله امیدوار هستیم که خوشبینی از اینا و خوشبینی کل ما تحقیق پیدا کنه. Thank you Ambassador Aziz Khan, and thank you Dr. Arun. تشکر آقای محمدی. Thank you Dr. Jin. And all of my panelists were, so all of you were optimists about the future and the regional cooperation. So let's remain optimists.
And you were excellent.